other staff that can provide us more detail for some of the items for item 9, and the city administrator is coming, but she's item 5, so if we wanted to get started, hopefully she'll up here.
Yeah, we can go slowly. All right, well, let's call this meeting to order of the Tumwater Tree Board, Monday, December 11th, 2023. Oh, there's the city manager. Okay, roll call. I'll just go ahead.
Mike Jackson.
Frank Grantham.
Brent Chapman.
Anna Owen.
Jim Sedor.
Do you all mind if I ask this 360 number if it's Tanya? Tanya, is the phone number you? Well, I addressed you thinking you were Tanya. Is this Tanya as the attendee at the 360 number? I'll check my email and see if
Okay.
normally how we.
All right. Yeah, Brody is absent. Maybe Tanya is on the line. Okay.
Yes. I'll
Oh, that is her?
share
Perfect.
everything via email.
Let's see, any changes to the agenda tonight?
Okay.
Approval of meeting minutes. Did everybody get a chance to thumb through the meeting minutes? To make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 9th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes from October 9th, 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, none? Okay, motion carries. Let's see, the next thing on the agenda is introduction to the city administrator, Lisa Parks.
Hi there. Thank you for a few minutes of your time. And I'll start off with my apologies for taking so many months to come see you. It was not my intent to take this amount of time, but I started on June 16th, and it has been a fire hose since. So I'll ask for a little grace and forgiveness there for taking my time, but wanted to come and introduce myself, give you a little bit of my background, answer any questions that you might have. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I'm sure it is valuable, but yeah, so that's why I'm here today. So just generally a little bit about me. I have a background in land use and environmental planning. I started out in June of 1990 with a degree in urban and regional planning from Eastern Washington University. And if you know anything about land use, that's the year that the Growth Management Act was passed and adopted. Not intentionally, but a good opportunity to start as a young planner in a career. I first went to work for Douglas County in North Central Washington. I was doing primarily long-range planning under growth management requirements, so a lot of natural resource planning, critical areas, community planning as well. The county provided all of the planning services for the small cities in Douglas County at that point in time, so got a little bit of opportunity to do that. But I also processed land use permits, so subdivisions, conditional use permits. I permitted a net pen of salmon on the Columbia River out in the hinterlands, so shoreline permitting as well. I was there for about 8 years, and then I had an opportunity to be the community development director at the city of Leavenworth in the late 90s. So went from county natural resource planning to small city with a very interesting vibe.
Tourism.
Tourism, exactly. Tourism, it was an interesting juxtaposition because tourism is the base economy in today's day and age. But Leavenworth has a long history, both in the logging industry as well as in ranching and orcharding. So it was a interesting place to be for a couple of years. Lots of opportunities to do a variety of different activities, including being a part of the management team for a city that had water, sewer, streets, we had contracted police and fire services, but, full range of services otherwise. And then from there, I actually was able to, found my own planning and environmental consulting firm based out of North Central Washington. 98% of my clients were local governments, both cities and counties, as well as after a few years, I expanded into working with port districts and public utility districts, so a wide range of planning and implementation, economic development strategies, as well as my work with public utility districts exposed me to a lot of federal planning requirements and federal agency compliance activities, those types of things. I did that for about 11 years, and then I had an opportunity to be selected and serve as the the executive director of the Port of Douglas County. Port of Douglas owned partially the airport in the Wenatchee area, but is primarily a small economic development-oriented port district. So lots of partnerships, lots of planning, lots of work to implement growth management planning services in a comprehensive way with economic development as a focus. So I did that for about 9 years, and then had an opportunity to move to the Olympia area for personal reasons in the fall of 2019. I first was working for a consulting firm that was doing environmental planning, working with port districts, strategic planning, those types of things. I had to commute from Olympia to Seattle 2 to 3 days a week until March of 2020. And then got about 8 to 12 hours a week of my life back and worked from home for a while. But then had an opportunity to go to work for the Port of Olympia. In July of 2021, I was working as their environmental and planning programs director, also working with them on capital facilities planning and those types of things, and then eventually had opportunity to expand my my service to the port through government affairs, communications, and I did some of their administrative work as well. So had the opportunity to apply for this position in the spring of this year, and felt like it was a real opportunity for me to get back to city government, which I enjoyed very much. I feel like cities are where you have the most direct contact and impact and influence on people's lives, hopefully for the better, and really have appreciated my time here at Tumwater. I find the employees, the elected officials, as well as the community members to be very committed to this community, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
What do you see as the unique challenges of Tumwater? You've worked in several parts of Washington, so what's special about Washington that you think is in the next 10 years?
So the challenge that is for Tumwater, but for not just for Tumwater, and so it's not unique to Tumwater, is balancing needs with resources. We are left with all communities in Washington State have been asked to do more with less on an ongoing basis for about 20 years or so. And we're now beginning to see the real impacts of the exponential loss of the potential for revenue, whether it's through property tax or those types of things. But so the challenge is trying to balance all the many needs of the community with available resources. What I find to be unique about Tumwater is that we are still a small community. We have a small community feel, which I really appreciate and value, but we are a full-service city. We provide law enforcement, we provide emergency and fire services, we've got a spectacular community development department, our water resources and sustainability department, and our transportation and engineering departments do a fantastic job of providing a lot of grants that help to offset and help with that balancing of resources with needs. And I just feel like, it's the feel and the culture in this organization is what makes it unique and what makes it, I think, have a great opportunity for success. And you had a question?
Yeah, thanks for coming, Lisa. I have a question and an offer.
Okay.
Have you ever had a chance to work with the urban forestry plan? And if not, how can our group help you?
Yeah. So my only exposure to your urban forestry plan is that I, at Brad's invitation, sat in on the interviews for the consultant that was working, most recently, that was working on your implementation strategy. I don't know a lot about it, and I would love to have an opportunity to learn more about it in terms of understanding what your priorities might be, how you see implementation, challenges that you see, barriers that you see for implementation to that urban forestry plan. And
I'll
I'm,
have to schedule it for another 2 hours then.
yeah. Exactly, understood. And I'm happy to come here, I'm happy to have coffee, I'm happy to talk individually. I have an open door policy, so please feel free to contact me.
That plan is actually quite unique especially for a city this size to have such a progressive, holistic, integrated urban forestry plan.
Yeah.
So in case you didn't catch that when you executive summary, I'll verbalize it.
Yeah.
So it's proud to be part of a community that is progressive in that planning.
Yeah,
And then we're working for implementation the best we can.
yeah, that's fabulous.
Any short-term goals for Tumwater? That-
Short-term goals? Aside from balancing resources to needs, I'm really interested in continuing to learn and build on the great workplace culture that we have here at the City of Tumwater. We've got a lot of great people that have a huge heart, not only for public service generally, but for the City of Tumwater as well. And I think we can really capitalize on that and really begin to, we can't keep up with Lacey and Olympia and our neighbors in terms of pay necessarily, but we certainly are going to work to knock it out of the park in terms of other reasons why people want to stay here at the City of Tumwater. And then I think there is a priority. We have an upcoming biennial budget process that'll be starting partway into 2024. So really working with the new seated council that will be, it'll have a slightly different makeup than the current council after January 1. And so working with them to understand what their priorities are for the community, and then working to set the budget and implement the strategies that it's going to take in order to be able to address those priorities. Those are a couple. Any other questions?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Mike knows all the history for the tree board, so if you ever want to know the history, he's the guy.
I have to say that, you asked what was unique, and working for a community that is 153 years old is unique for me, and I think it's fabulous. I think
He doesn't go back that far.
not that far, gotcha, okay.
It may feel like it some days.
Yeah, right.
I was struck by the recruitment material that talks about how Tumwater is a progressive community and is forward-looking, but is also at the same time very connected to its past. And so I really appreciate that. I think having the history around the natural environment, as well as the people that have settled this community, time immemorial to, American settlements, I think all of those things really add to the unique character of this community, and it is really exciting. I like history. I like the idea that we want to stay connected to that moving forward.
If we could do something with the brewery.
That's one of the other, I figured I would say that was a priority, but that's always a priority, right? I will say my stump speech right now is talking about pulling on threads. So every thread that presents itself related to redevelopment of the brewery is gonna get pulled to its end state. Whether that's to nothing in particular, that, so be it. But, it is obviously a priority to clean that property up, and ensure that the environmental contamination that is very likely and probable, both in the buildings as well as in the surrounding, land environment and potentially in the groundwater, is cleaned up. And that there is some advantageous, appropriate, beneficial use of that property. And cleaning up the eyesore is really a high priority. And it's actually, that's one of the other projects that I really enjoy. It's similar to some of the work that I did with brownfield redevelopment in, at the Port of Douglas. And some of the work that I was doing at the Port of Olympia with the Bud Inlet Sediment Remediation Project that they are, working on. So super excited to see if we can pull some threads there. Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, well, I'm going to take my leave, of you, but I am happy to come back and listen and participate anytime in the future, and please feel free to reach out. You can find my contact information on the city's website, or Alyssa can connect you with me as well, so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service,
Thanks, Lisa.
Alyssa.
All right, the next item on the agenda is tree board member reports. Do you want to talk a little bit about shrubs and?
Yeah. I get several gardening and horticulture magazines monthly, and in the last few months, there've been a couple articles related to shrubs, both native and ornamental, and their use. And one of them referred to the website YouTube video that Alyssa passed on. I thought did an excellent job in 2 minutes of kind of talking about the use of hedges and shrubs in the urban environment, although it's British. It made me think about the challenges we have. And as I recall, Mike, in the past, for example, at Arbor Day, we've offered red osier dogwood as one of the giveaways. As an alternative to trees, we've offered a shrub, a native shrub, to the citizens. I remember, in past Arbor Days, we've had people say, you're giving us trees and we have little postage stamp yards, and we love plants and stuff like that. And I thought, how do we deal in the urban environment, which this video talked about, with small sizes, small spaces, and the hedge shrub scenario option is kind of, I thought, we call ourselves the tree board, and as we've talked about the ordinances and revising them, we've talked about associated plants and associated with the urban forest. I mean, we're not only talking about trees. So, and I was reminded of the years I spent in the natural resources building. My office faced a 3-story cement wall that was the parking garage, and it was covered with Parthenocissus, with the Virginia creeper, a vine, that it just covered the concrete and absorbed the heat and did some of those things and made it look nicer. And I thought, as we are dealing with the urban setting, more hardscape, but we have flower beds or little patches of ground or the space between the curb and the sidewalk. We usually think, I usually am oriented towards trees there, but in many cases, that's too big or it's not going to be successful. And I was reminded several places around here, and for example, Tumwater High School, where there's a hedge between the curb and the sidewalk that serves as a safety barrier kind of between those high schoolers, It's a solid 3-foot hedge that kind of, I suspect, keeps parents from dropping their kid off on the curb Instead, they go in the driveway and they go in the parking garage and drop off their kids. Keeps the kids from running out into the street, or that keeps the cars from getting too close to the kids. That's a really valuable plant in that setting. Whereas, if we had trees 16 feet apart, it wouldn't provide much safety for those kids, nor much noise abatement, directly and all of that sort of stuff. The video showed, trees and birds and insects in the hedges, providing, some habitat for them. And I just thought, maybe there are places as we look, and then I participated last month with Alyssa in checking on some of the trees that we have on our tree keeper inventory, and looked at the roundabout there at Little Rock and Tumwater Boulevard. There's a lot of Nandina, heavenly bamboo planted in there, no trees, but she didn't ask me to identify the Nandina, and are they all there? So we're not including those in the inventory, and it kind of made me stop and think, that's a valuable plant resource in a roundabout. Maybe we don't want to have a tree that's going to block the view of traffic as we want to see what's coming and what's going, but those shrubs are a valuable asset to the environment and to the community, and just looks nice and all that sort of stuff. So, where is our responsibility as a tree board for the other non-tree plants as we further develop the urban forest management plan? And should we be thinking more about incorporating those plants into our promotions, they're in landscape plans. And I can see where a tree is harder to plant, and when it comes down, it's noticeable and missed, and it takes longer to grow. So I can see where historically we've been more interested in trees than shrubs and orbs and everything else. But there are times when the shrub may be the better plant for what we're trying to accomplish in creating a healthy environment that's absorbing some of the radiation, dealing with the runoff, providing habitat for native plant animals. And I just thought maybe we should have a little discussion about that as a tree board. I've even thought, do we need to change our name? Are we the plant board, or, something like that?
It gets into the history again, see?
Yeah.
When we started, it started because of Tumwater Hill, and it was a tree issue because they stripped off all those maple clumps, which they had very few trees on the hill anyway. And they worked with the ordinance and everything and getting it started because of that. And then because of that, every house up there was supposed to plant 3 trees in every yard. As part of the, when you buy a house, you were directed to plant 3 trees.
Is this in addition to the street trees? Or did the street trees?
No,
come
3 trees, yeah, those are part of the development.
Separate, okay.
You bought the house, now you gotta put in 3 trees
In your yard.
in your yard.
Okay.
Well, I doubt if anybody ever really checked every one of those houses up there to make sure that they ended up with the 3. But the thing is, like you point out, see, we started a tree board because that was the only issue up there, was removing all those trees that weren't really trees. And it grew from there. And we've talked about it several times, about the canopy can be, hey, a hedgerow canopy is a heck of a lot more beneficial than having even 5 trees in the hedge. Like over by the post office, those areas where they planted maples every once in a while, and then they got all that, it's basically solid canopy.
Yes.
It's just the canopy's only a foot or 2 above the ground.
Yes.
I think we generally have been thinking that, hey, the understory vegetation is just as important as canopy.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think we
tree.
intentionally have that verbiage in the urban forestry
Yeah, I
plan.
think so.
there's
You
reference to
and
layers
associated
under
plant
layer,
material,
yeah.
I
yeah,
don't know if we're tracking it in one of our,
yeah.
matrices, but it's certainly in our introductory verbiage.
And it may be a time, because the way it started and now, it's just like all these these
Roundabouts,
cul-de-sacs and roundabouts that go in. I mean, you can drive throughout the three-city area, and there's some of them that are already built up a couple of feet, and now they've planted the darn things, and you can't see a thing. And at night, when it's pouring rain, good luck.
yeah.
And, there may be a time, so you could try to come up with something different and push some of these places where, and that fits right into the new, tree code. Because if they try to change that around, it'll even be worse. Because that lower stuff doesn't count anything. And
Yes.
it's real important.
Yes,
The wildland urban interface code that you're referring to?
Yeah, the new code. I mean, if they're thinking about changing it from the 12 trees per acre, and that was always bad enough to meet. The only guys that really had any advantage was there weren't any trees out there.
yeah,
They didn't even need to worry about them.
right.
But, hey, if they've got some of these places that have got, well, we had some in Tumwater that were old Christmas tree pieces
Right,
that were now 6 inches in diameter.
didn't get cut.
And there's a good one, example right out here on Strasburg. And we had to fight for that to be able to get those apartments in there. Because the guy planted like a couple hundred of those Christmas trees, and then they let them go. But, you know, that solid canopy.
Yeah, then removing 6 trees.
Really
Yeah,
beneficial.
yeah. Yeah, and as we, you know, in the next 5 years, we're gonna have 2,000 apartments within 5 miles of this place.
Yeah,
Um, Now, those apartments, we can say, you know, plant trees, but there may be pieces of ground that are exposed that are not the best place to have a maple tree or a western red cedar or something that may be great for a Mahonia, Oregon grape, or a salal, or a something. I know when I was doing some landscaping for some friends, that they had some contained areas where we planted St. John's wort. You know, and it was contained on 4 sides by sidewalks in the building, and it just did a great job of filling in the area, and creating some habitat for birds and rats, squirrels and rabbits and things like that. Very low maintenance, but if we'd put 1 tree there, you know, and then had the rest of the area bare, it probably wouldn't have been as beneficial.
well, and the other thing too is that the shrubs and low vegetation that cover the ground is so much easier to replace when a daggum tree or a truck goes off, or like on Second Avenue where it takes out 2 or 3 of the trees that have been there.
Yeah,
And now we gotta replace a tree in there because it looks so stupid with 2 trees here and then nothing,
yeah,
and then another tree.
yeah, 1 big truck accident can take out.
Or one stupid car.
Exactly,
I
one
mean, when they're
graduation night,
small,
yeah,
'cause when they're bigger, it takes out the car.
yeah, and kills people.
Yeah,
I'm hearing maybe, like, we have a preferred tree list that we're working
Right.
on refining. Maybe we could have a similar list for understory shrubs / hedges. I'm just a little hesitant on the word hedge, because
Me too.
most people think of a formal hedge. And
Yes.
not that there's anything wrong with that, other than the fact that it requires a lot of maintenance that most homeowners and businesses and cities can't afford.
Right.
So I think that gives us an opportunity, if we do develop, you know, how do we define, or what do we advocate when we say, you know, what's gonna be best for habitat, best for the environment, best for low maintenance? So
Right.
it'll help guide people and educate people about everything we're talking about, that helps steer them in a more productive direction.
And Trent and I have talked a little bit about native shrubs. You know, there are options there that may be, affordable, again, easy to replace. I know when I bought my place, moved in, it had been scraped clean by bulldozers. It had been an orchard and a pasture. And I went out and dug up sword fern and salal. And, it took about 3 years and that was solid, you know, in my front yard. So it's easy to do and it's pretty low maintenance. And it's there in a short period of time. So anyway, I just thought, how does that work and how do we promote smaller plants? I know I've wrestled with my neighbors, you know, where they built so many homes per acre. And they've got, yesterday I walked around Miracet, one of my neighbors replaced his lawn with not even AstroTurf, it's indoor-outdoor carpeting. His whole front yard and side yards are green outdoor
Have you
carpeting.
seen him vacuum it yet?
I mean, you know, AstroTurf, you.
Well, that's like,
Grass, yeah.
violation of the impervious surface.
Yeah. So, you know, I
It
just,
used to be like 40%.
it's the whole front yard and side yards.
Would love to get that address from you, Jeff.
Get a knock on the door. But yeah, I know we had talked to, we had a person in our HOA who wanted to replace their lawn with, they wanted to use like a recycled AstroTurf or, you know, synthetic lawn that they had gotten from somewhere, but, yeah, we talked to the city and you can only have like so much impervious area and that's considered impervious, so.
Well, that's, I mean,
I
that's
just
kind of a
wanna mention.
trend, it makes me nervous when I see, you know, a neighbor doing that versus, you know, when my neighbor and I first moved into our subdivision, you know, it was being developed very slowly, maybe 2 houses a year. And so we just let stuff come up from the ground, like salal. And, I brought in some fern. And it thrived, you know, it's what was there 100 years ago. And I know that there's issues with noxious weeds and some cities say, you know, you need to do a better job of controlling the plants on your property because it's producing seed and that sort of stuff. And how do you do that? There's a group called Wild Ones. Some of you may be familiar with, that's promoting people to convert their yards into all native plants, let it go back to natural. And they talk about how to deal with city codes that say you can't do that. So maybe we can find a balance here and actually kind of promote, well, we see Mahonia, Oregon grape being planted ornamentally quite a bit.
Heck, that salal is one of the best pieces of brush to keep the noxious weeds out.
Exactly.
Boy, if you've got a hole in there, that blackberry's gonna start.
That's true. And Scotch broom.
And it's, yeah, oh geez, Scotch broom, yeah.
When are we slated to review the landscape ordinance tentatively? I know it hinges on other variables.
We'll get to that in item 9.
Okay, because that seems like that's where it fits in.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
be starting that again in the spring, once the Wild and Urban Interface Code has been adopted at the state level and we know exactly what's in it.
Yeah.
We, still as a tree board, we need to think of that as they move to the code.
Yeah.
Because man, if they present some of that stuff that was supposed to be already presented anyway, and they're ready to, you know, here's the old code and here's the new code, hey, there isn't anything in there about, understory.
Right.
We've got to really watch that if we're thinking of going that way, and I think, as long as, if you had salal, that's 100% canopy, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
rivet, and, because just like my yard, I mean, I've only got a fifth of an acre, but heck, I've got cedar trees that I planted when they were, 1-0s, and now those need to be cut down because they've taken over the fence and everything. But every year that we've been giving away something, there's always something left, so I plant it in my yard. And I got so much stuff in the yard that, but hey, it's just small, but boy, the birds and the squirrels and
Habitat is great.
and the deer, because the deer come in and drink out of the daggum bird bath. And, hey, I got it all fenced, but that didn't do any good.
Not for deer, yeah.
Well, anyway, it all fits together.
I know we'll be talking about, for example, Arbor Day coming up and what we're gonna offer. We do that every year, and I would just like us to maybe think about offering a shrub.
You can.
We have, I think, in the
When we
past.
went to the gallon plants,
Right.
Yeah,
we had, we're,
gallons, yeah.
gallon plants. Heck, I drug 3 of those cedar down there in my big pots and set them on the side, and heck, somebody took them. I mean, they were trees, they were cedars, but once they get to 4 or 5 feet, I mean, I gotta get them out of the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, really.
And and hedges are used a lot in landscaping.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably refer to it more as like a buffer planter, because that's how it is in the code. There's the type 1, type 2, type 3, where I think it's progressive. Sometimes it's backwards between different municipalities, but type 1 is usually like the solid screen, type 2 is a filtered screen, type 3 is a.
Well, it's important that if they're recognized like that, that you'd be able to replace those instead of having, like some of these developments where you've got all these trees in the buffer. Like I talked before, the stuff that we've annexed, that the county required that 25-foot buffer. And, hey, those trees are basically all hazard trees to the small development.
Maybe just mow right up to the edge of that buffer and
Huh?
then just leave everything in the buffer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and now that somebody develops on the other side, because they're in Tumwater, and now you've got the county buffer on this side of the fence, and now you've got the other buffer on the other side, where maybe they wanna plant a hedge, or, different kinds of landscapes, they ought to be allowed to do that.
Yeah. Today I was noticing how many, gas stations, their beds are full of ivy, Hedrehelics. So, it's effective, but I don't think that's what we want to promote. We want to, offer some, kind of get the idea that you don't plant ivy anywhere.
Yeah, just leave it alone.
Yeah, well, let's put in some Oregon grapes, let's put in salal, let's show that there are options.
And Doug has a noxious weed board, does a lot of work on promoting replanting with native plants, understory plants when the noxious weeds are removed. So there could be a lot of collaboration with work that's already being done
Great.
to educate the public on
Yeah.
that very thing. Great to get rid of the noxious weeds, but then what do you do with the gap?
Right. That's my report.
all right, that's good. Good to talk about.
Yeah.
Anything else? Coordinators report?
Try to be quick, because we have 3 other staff members that are here eager to
Okay,
be part of a future agenda item. The tree inventory project is moving along. I've had a lot of volunteers, ground truthing the data and getting quality data back from them, which has been great. They're gonna give me all the data back by the 15th of this month. Then, I've been sending it piecemeal to the consultant. They've been updating the street tree inventory with those that they're finding are removed or stumps or so on and so forth. And I've got a midterm report due at the end of this month for that grant. So we're about halfway through. Next, they'll work on the maintenance plan and schedule with the budgets and whatnot with the data once we're done messing with the data. Jim and I visited Olympia Ecosystems Deschutes River Preserve about 2 weeks ago. It's a restoration site just outside of city limits. We hiked around there for
2 hours.
2 hours, learned about a few of the things that they're doing there and the ways that they're doing restoration.
Who's they?
Olympia Ecosystems, it's a nonprofit that operates locally throughout the county.
I think there are at least 4 preserves that they own.
Yeah, they purchase the land and then they work on restoring it.
This one is 367 acres, just on the other side of, Bush Prairie subdivision, Trails End, Old Trails End, the other side of the river.
The comprehensive plan survey is out, so if you haven't already received a postcard or found the link some other way, I'll email it out. Please feel free to respond. We want responses. Please answer honestly, and we'll be using that. Mostly Brad will be using that to work on the comprehensive plan over the next year and a half. And just letting you know, I know that the street tree inventory and the tree inventory, the fact that we've been collecting the data, that we've had the data, but that we're having volunteers go out to make sure the data is still accurate over time because we haven't been keeping up with it in terms of our own work orders. I have a meeting this week to start talking about that with our GIS staff and also the Transportation Engineering Department and my department. We all use the same work order system, so we'll have one solution with that work order system, and then we'll start a conversation with community development and parks that we'll deal with the data in a different way. So we'll have a couple different standard operating procedures to hopefully keep that data with integrity over time. Those are my updates today.
All right. Do we have any public comment tonight?
We have some people that are here. I'm going to let Mary talk and ask if, Mary, would you like to provide any public comment tonight?
I hadn't planned to do so, but now I have a comment after hearing that.
Okay.
The updates.
Okay.
I thoroughly favor the notion of looking broadly, like the plan says, at understory plants as well. I'm curious about the history of why all that Mahonia was cut down along 2nd Avenue. It was great habitat. There were always birds as I bike by there, always birds in there, and then it was just cut down and it's grass. And I have no idea why that happened. And it happened shortly after it had been trimmed by Lucan's Tree Service, I think, were the ones. And the other piece that comes to mind is when we think about what plants could be there, salal, yes, Oregon grape, yes. But let's not put any St. John's wort. Let's not put anything that really doesn't provide food habitat for native animals. And yes to get rid of the ID. So that's all.
Mary. And I'll ask if Jerome wants to talk. Normally doesn't, but Jerome, would you like to make any public comment tonight? Asking to unmute, but it's not working. Jerome, if you'd like to make public comment, please put something in the chat. I'm having a hard time getting the unmuting thing to work for you. You all see me, I'm trying to click on this. Okay. If you'd like to speak, Jerome, please put something in the chat. Normally doesn't though.
All right. The Urban Forestry Management Plan implementation.
Yes. It's that time of year again. Thanks for accommodating me having it in December instead of November. I don't remember why, but it worked better for me being able to get you the materials, so thank you for that. We have Brad and Stan and Mary Heather here tonight, available to answer any questions. If any of you would like to say anything about Urban Forestry Management Plan implementation before I start scrolling through a very large Excel document, please feel free to speak.
could you orientate us to these people's role? I know Brad, I'm not trying
Yes,
to.
let me introduce them. My apologies. All right, so you all know Brad. Brad is our planning manager and community development. Stan is, I actually don't 100% remember your operations manager, but I think it's beyond that.
Yeah.
Stan?
I'm the Parks and Facilities Manager for the city of Tumwater.
Stan is a wonderful part of the team and also a wood turner with amazing talents.
I also
And Mary Heather Ames.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Go ahead, Stan.
I wanted to comment on the earlier gentleman talking about the understory. We at Parks really try to maintain the right plant in the right place. And that's pretty much what we define, whether it's a tree or a shrub or whatever, it's the right plant, right place, whether it be water, no water, sun, no sun, attractant, pollinator. We really try to do the right thing. Especially in the last 5 years, we've really kept our finger on all of that. So I hope we're trying to do you proud.
I have a question for Sam. So nothing straightforward, as good as all this sounds. I know there's a lot of limitations when it comes to security needs and lines of sight. Could you maybe briefly update us on how you have to manage the understory to meet security needs?
Well, it depends on the building, honestly. Again, the right place. Like when I was at the school district, we planted a lot of barberry underneath windows that you could get into because nobody wanted to have to mess around with trying to walk through a barberry plant. But they still look nice year round. Honestly, what I've been doing lately is lighting things. Light prevents movement and prevents, I hate to equate people that break into things with cockroaches, but you turn the lights on and they dissipate. They disappear. And that's what we've been trying to do for our buildings, because our buildings at night, our parks are closed after 5, say tonight, they're closed at 6 o'clock or so. You know, closed for 12 hours and there's a lot of activity out there sometimes. So I hope that answered your question.
Well, thank you. And more specifically, does the Tumwater Police Department give you any guidance or recommendations to make their job easier or more effective?
Yeah, we work together. You bet. Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that we were trying to incorporate into the code updates too, was CPED. It's a crime prevention with plants.
Thank you.
Sam, another question. A neighbor came to me the other day and he said that he'd heard that the Tumwater City Council is talking about opening up the parks for homeless people 24 hours.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Totally wrong. Couldn't be more wrong. What my boss, Chuck Denny, the Parks Director, is trying to do is enable our Parks Department has a really good policy regarding people camping. There's no camping on Parks property. There's no overnight stays park property. You can't be there after they're closed. We were merely trying to enable the rest of the city property to have our same policy. So, because technically you could camp in front of City Hall, but you couldn't in a park. We're trying to make all the city property to that state to where you can't camp, stay overnight, or park your car or your Winnebago in our property overnight or the weekend. People took the thing wrong and ran with it. And it's a shame because we're trying to do the right thing. We're not enabling people to stay the night. We're trying to prevent them from staying in the rest of our property. I don't know how it got turned around. Yes. And I hope whoever's monitoring this for the news will call Chuck Denny and get his quote. And we would love to get the facts out there.
Great. I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We are also joined by Mary Heather Ames, who is the Assistant Manager for Transportation and Engineering, or Assistant Director for Transportation. Yes, it's even in your thing here. Who is wonderful. Move along. Each year we have our annual meeting going over the Urban Forestry Management Plan implementation. This is that meeting. I put together a memo and a Excel document that last year you all wanted to scroll through, so I'm prepared to do that with you as well this year. But just some highlights here. I made some pie charts on how good we're doing. 74% of the actions that are for 2021 to 2023, granted that's not all of the actions, there's hundreds, in the plan. The ones that we're supposed to be working on right now, 74% of them are on track, 12% are starting next year, and 14% are delayed. And I have this compared last year and this year. We have more on track, less starting next year, and less delayed. Last year, we had some pending grant funding, and we were able to get a lot of that awarded, so.
And is there a theme for the ones that are delayed, or are they all like, each one has their own story?
Each one has their own story. And I'm gonna stop sharing here and open up the Excel, and we can start to scroll through that. And it's a beautiful Excel.
Well, all Excel.
Very, very complicated. Thank you, Brad, for putting that together. I just keep copying what you have. So we can either, I have it sorted right now for, I fit everything on the same screen here and still be able to see it. I have it started as in alphabetical order backwards. So starting in 2024 being the first actions and those that are on track, and then delayed at the end. But last year you wanted to look at delayed first, so I'm happy to sort if that's the way that you would like to do it. You all let me know how you'd like to go through this.
I don't know that we need to review the ones that are on track. So, my suggestion is we could, which is most of them, vast majority of them, maybe we could, not take our time to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I've sorted it to delayed. So now these are all the actions that are delayed in terms of implementation. So the first one here, so large, there's so many things here, I can hardly read this. Adopt best management practices here. Regularly review and update the Public Works Standards and Development Guide and facilities procedures for the maintenance of city trees and the community and urban forest. Modify, reflect best management practices. So many things on the screen right now.
Which one is this?
This is because they're sorted. If you go to the, when they start to show delayed. Yeah. So it's I can pull up the PDF, so it's just easier to sort through the.
Oh, that's fine, I can't read that.
We're gonna rely on you to verbalize it.
I will read them as
Okay.
best I can.
And then maybe this is part of your plan, but I'm particularly interested in what the game plan is to get them undelayed, if there is an option for that.
Yeah, so the ones that are starting in 2024 are things that were delayed that I've been able to squeeze onto my work plan, or others have been able to squeeze onto their work plans. The ones that are delayed are ones that we couldn't yet.
They're on pause.
Yes, we intend to do them as soon as there's time available, or if there's another step that needs to be taken prior to this being taken. So like for this one, it would be silly to go through the development guide and update it prior to the codes changing. So this is delayed because we want to actually put the right thing in there and not do it twice. We want to be efficient with the way that we're working. So this one here is delayed because of the code amendments. They're still on their way. This next one, and I tend to read fast and go fast, so just tell me stop. Formalize relationships with organizations in green industries that share common aims affecting community and urban forest sustainability. Staff has reached out to industry leaders for the code amendment update process, but did not see participation from those industries. More work will be needed to be done once the code amendment updates are completed. So we reached out to landscaping companies to plant nurseries as part of the code amendment process and just didn't get a response. So we're still working on building those relationships, but we haven't had great success yet.
And I'm wondering how many of these can be tagged that they could be moved into action if we had a part-time urban forester or full-time urban forester. I don't know when you're making your pitch to city council for that position, but it seems like this is some data that could feed that and have them see something concrete that's Well, these are the things that delayed that may not be if we had an urban forester.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not saying that applies to everything, but what it does apply to.
there are definitely some that are delayed, that is my exact, like, reason for, or my status update for it, is this would be better done with an urban forester.
Nice.
As you all
And
know,
when are we making that pitch? Or are you making that pitch?
it'll be,
Whoever's doing it.
I'm going to be proposing it for inclusion in the next biennium budget, so about, half of the way through next year, we'll start to work on the budget. I would love the tree board to advocate for that, the 50% that's still needed to get funded for that, however you feel like doing that. But it'll start in 2025, and it's 4 years that we have the grant funding for it. Fingers crossed that after the 4 years that the city retains that position, but we'll see if we're in the financial ability to do so.
I think something concrete the board can do is to capitalize, what it sounds like you're already doing, what parts of the plan this person could move forward.
And I've only looked at it in terms of what the urban forester could be really helpful with, in terms of those that are slated to be worked on right now. Because the plan is so large and honestly a little overwhelming, I haven't gotten into like the actions for 2025, 2026 yet, in which case I'm sure there are a bunch that are well suited to someone with an actual background in urban forestry being the lead for that.
The more we can knit this all together and paint a picture for council, the better they'll be able to react to it.
I'm confident we can craft it together.
Thanks.
And didn't you report that we got the funding for the urban forester if we have matching funds?
Yeah, so we received money from the federal government. We were awarded a grant from the U.S. Forest Service that includes 50% of the funding needed for salary and benefits for a full-time urban forester. That in the grant doesn't start until 2025 because I tried to align it with the budget in hopes that we would be able to have the allocation to cover the other 50% of having that person. There are a couple other things, the grant funds, which are also 50%.
What's the dollar amount for the 50% for urban forester?
The total match that we need to have over 5 years is like $340,000, which is salary, 3 sets of incentives, heat sensors all over the city, developing a program for urban heat that the urban forester would oversee. Next action, develop a stable funding source and budget for annual maintenance and selective harvest of trees within developed landscape city properties such as city streets and city facilities and parks. That's delayed because the budget starts next year for the following year. So the timing is just off for that. And we will.
And any of our tree fund on that objective?
The tree fund so far I've used for the grant match for the inventory, and that's all I've spent it on this year. We have intentions to spend it on some of those restoration activities that you talked with the stormwater folks for, but they don't have a planting plan yet, so we don't know how much to spend, but there is the intention to, there was $25,000 each year of the 23-2024 budget allocated for tree planting from the tree fund, and then an additional $10,000 each of those years respectively from the stormwater fund as well. So we have money to do the planting. I don't have the capacity to do it. Our habitat and outreach person, who you met, Grant, does, and we're just waiting for that to come to fruition and have plans and move forward. Another one, develop a funding source, stable funding source and budget for maintenance of natural forests on city lands and critical areas and shoreline areas. Again, that's the next upcoming budget, but something that we are being strategic about this year with the inventory is making that nexus to stormwater, so that we'll also have another funding source that's available from the stormwater utility in addition to the tree fund and the general fund that we'll ask for from the budget process.
I have so many questions, but not necessarily that I'm a pro-tax person, but I know the city of Olympia always seems to be successful, not always, many times, in raising taxes for community benefit, for art or environment, or, they're very proactive in Olympia about raising more money through taxes for programs like this. Has Tumwater ever considered going that route? Or you don't think the citizens have an appetite for that in the city?
I honestly have no idea. I've never suggested a tax for a city of Tumwater. I know that when the city of Olympia was looking at a funding mechanism to fund their climate work, that we were kind of waiting and seeing what they were doing.
That passed, didn't it?
That did not pass,
Oh,
and
it did not.
since decided to not work on it for a while. I'll ask the question. I can ask the question.
That's very successful with art, raising money for art. I'm just trying to,
But not for fire.
but not for,
The RFA would have opened up some general fund money, that we could have used. But since that did not pass, that was not available for this. We're trying to be creative.
it's just be interesting to test the appetite for this community for something specifically environmentally related. You know, maybe like none, no appetite at all, or some, or, you know, might be a lot, I don't know.
I know City of Tumwater is a little, more tax, additional tax averse
Yeah,
than Olympia, but
thank you.
look for opportunities to build on and expand existing city education and outreach programs to increase the understanding and the value of the community and urban forests, as well as responsibilities of public and private. Oh, it's gonna be hard.
Donors.
Thank you.
Found your spot there.
I did.
The action, or the progress report for this, is staff suggests delaying this action until the urban forester is hired. However, the Tumwater School District Forest and Stream Summer Course helped advance this action in 2023, but not enough where I would say like it's done. Most of these are no done.
Is that gonna happen again next year?
Best of my knowledge, yes.
Right.
And again, Stan, Brad, Mary Heather, if any of these overlap specifically with you or the reports that you gave me, please feel free to unmute yourself as well and add context. Develop education and incentive programs focused on maintaining the community and urban forests found on private property. Last meeting, we talked about that incentives memo, and you all had asked to delay that action or decision until spring. So this one's delayed. Support and incentivize the use of large canopy trees in areas, appropriate areas to provide maximum benefits. Again, this one, staff suggests delaying this action until the urban forester is hired. Coordinate with the fire department on actions to minimize fire risks associated with urban forestry. The fire department plans to begin this work when the hazard mitigation plan is completed, both regionally and for the city. The hazard mitigation plan will be brought to the city council for consideration in spring 2024. Which is the same for this other action. Remove trees in understory in specific situations identified in the Tumwater Annex of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan for the Thurston region. Same thing, waiting until the new one is there before we act. Next action is develop a program to work with public and private property owners in maintaining and providing public safety with the community and urban forest. I'm suggesting that we delay that until the urban forester is hired. And that is it for delayed action.
That's impressive. There's so few.
We're working on it. We've all been, we've all been taking lots of actions in all the different departments. So if you would like to go through any of the other areas, we can. If you want to ask specific questions of the staff that are here from the respective departments, they're here. Staff, if you would like to share any insight that you have on your implementation of the urban forestry management plan, we're here.
What would you say you got the most traction on as a city, either you personally or collaborating with all these other departments?
In implementing the plan?
Yeah, what worked really, really well, do you think?
The code updates that we were working on and that we will still work on and finalize hit a lot of the actions. So we were trying to incorporate as many as possible. Also the inventory project, the 6 or 7 actions in one. So we've all just been trying to be as strategic as possible about having as many actions encompassed into one project. There can be different parts of the scope. That's an overarching project to make sure that we're just like getting it done. That and we meet quarterly. Everybody that's on here from staff and sometimes fire as well. So we were having regular updates. This I go through at least once a year with all of the staff that are assign different parts of the urban forestry management plan, but this year we were doing it quarterly, and I'm not sure, you all can speak to this, if having those quarterly updates reminded you of the plan more often, or it could be that we just did really good this year.
And will council hear about all these successes?
We can, if you all would like to suggest that this be something that the council sees as well. Right in the urban forestry management plan, it's just an update to you all, but I can go to city council if you want to.
I have one vote for that.
Yeah, it seems like it.
There's a motion.
Yeah,
Especially with the new people.
yeah.
Someone want to make a formal motion in a second and vote and stuff?
Yeah, let's make a motion to have, what would it be, the urban forestry update priorities, status, be presented to city council?
I was really, I know you talk fast, but really in 10 minutes, I learned a lot. And I think that, council would really appreciate that condensed. I think that could really move the needle for their understanding and potential support, continued support.
I heard motion.
Second.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I stuck the discussion right in there.
I can hear you.
Hey, Tanya.
Hi,
Does anyone?
we got it figured out. I don't know how, but thank goodness.
Does anyone have any questions that you would like to pose to the other staff that are here about this, so that we can maybe ask your questions, but then when you're done, so that they can be released to
I have one question I would like to ask, and I'm just wondering if, due to this proposed change, has there been any permitting increases, or are people trying to get projects moved through, to avoid any updated code?
First of all, can you hear me? Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Brad.
My microphone cut out for about 20 minutes, so I was wondering, I hope they don't ask any questions. Interpretive answer, no. We're not really seeing an uptick in terms of any perceived, problems with, more stringent regulations coming up. What we are seeing is a slowdown in permitting because of outside factors, like it's more expensive right now for money and the industry-wide things rather than anything we're doing specifically.
All right.
Well, Brett, does the state still own the DOT? Over on.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
the state still owns the DOT property. We are in the process of figuring out how to purchase it. We've got a few options. We did a initial look at the property. I believe we're also looking for state funding, grant funding as well, to do some of that work, but that's sort of the centerpiece for the Capitol Boulevard corridor plan as a redevelopment site. So we have our eyes on it. Our primary concern, of course, is the fact the property's been used for almost 100 years for transportation related things, and it's probably clean as a whistle, but we just want to make sure it is. So.
And what's the vision for the rest of the property that doesn't abut Capitol Way?
The plan is a mixed-use development, some level of commercial up front, residential, multifamily behind is the effort. But I think also we're going to be going out to the industry to see what would work on the market side. But we're definitely, what we want is more bodies, full-time residents on Capitol Boulevard, and additional commercial to support that would be nice. But I think we need more housing than commercial right now.
As long as we save those trees.
Yeah, no, there are definitely some
Heritage
trees out there
trees.
that are worthy of saving, so they're on our list.
Okay. Because those babies have a heck of a root system.
And there's 6 heritage trees on that property?
I think there's 3.
There's the 4 sycamore, and then there's Doder cedar, maybe 2 of those. Theodore, thank you. Still not from here.
Nice.
Any other questions or anything that staff want to share before you are released your evening? I'm normally in ballet with Mary Heather right now. She had to not go tonight, so
Oh,
I, I'm just thinking about that with her.
I'd like to add
Anything
something,
else?
but
All right.
Thank you.
thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brad, Stan, and Mary Heather.
I'd like to add something if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, I just want you to know that there's a difference between the Parks and Recreation Department and what the city's trying to do. Not that we disagree at all. I'm just saying we're responsible for the parks properties, our mitigation ponds, and all of our mitigation areas, trails and whatnot. Whereas Public Works is responsible for, homeowners, correct me if I'm wrong, the rest of the city. So when we're passing this plan, we have these questions and we go back and forth. We're trying to work with Public Works every way we can. Keep in mind though, I've got a urban forester on staff right now. I've got another person who's studying to get his degree with urban forestry, but we can't tackle these things unless we have funding for it. We're stuck. We are so tight right now, and we are so short-staffed that you've heard it from everybody, I'm sure, and I'm not trying to pull your heartstrings, but this is the fact. So that if we do go to council, I'd like to see some sort of a move toward, hey, let's throw some dough at these guys so they can actually do it right. That's my thought.
And Stan, the tree maintenance plan that the folks that are doing the inventory are putting together will have specific budget asks for on a cycle for the needed maintenance and care of the trees, because in our parks, with the exception of Pioneer Park and Sap Road Park that they did sampling at, every other park, they touched every single tree and assessed its health. So we know the primary defect.
How
Sorry?
close did it come to Wayne's assessment a year and a half ago?
More specific. We have more specific information,
Nice.
but very close to his assessments from before. And from that, we'll have specific budget asks to be putting in there. So, and then we'll have a report that the city helps fund, and we also got grant funding that says we need to spend this much to care for the trees. I'm hopeful that having that data and the advocacy of anybody else will help land that ask so that we do get the amount that's needed to care for the forest.
Because personally, I tend to have to spend more money to rid ourselves of unsafe trees to the public than I get to spend planting new trees. And I'd really like to plant more new trees and get rid of unsafe trees. Not that they don't need to be handled. I just would like to be, when you get my urban forestry memos, I'd like to be able to show that there's some trees planted more than, we spend money to get rid of them. I know these trees have.
Do you have an adopt program?
Pardon?
Do you have an adopt a tree program where a citizen could adopt a tree for a park? To sponsor, I should say, maybe sponsor a tree for a park, a new tree.
We don't, and that's something I'd look into. I'd love that.
Ooh, that could be, you could get a lot of traction with that, I bet. There's more than 1 or 2 tree lovers in the city that would probably want to buy a tree for a park.
Yeah, that'd be great. Again,
I think sponsor
there's
is
so
a
many
better
trees.
word than adopt. Adopt sounds like they're on the hook for years. Sponsor could be a one-time thing.
Yeah, there's just been so many trees that have reached their age, and then we're dealing with rot and cracks and damage that are above peoples and trails and whatnot that we have to deal with. And that's where a lot of my money goes in urban forestry, for my
I
dollars.
think there's a lot of untapped potential in the city for helping with the plan. I might be naive, but until you try, even if you got 50 people to buy it, that's 50 new trees for parks.
That'd be great. I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm sure Alyssa can show me.
We can figure it out together, Stan.
Thank you. Thank you for
I'll be
inviting.
the first one. I'll buy it. I just know what you need.
We'll figure out a calculation based on that tree maintenance, how much it costs to maintain the trees over their life.
I'm not volunteering to pay for that. I'm paying.
Just to plant it?
Yeah.
Well, see, our issue is that we need the money to make
I
it
know.
healthy in the long term.
Exactly. But we buy a really sighted after tree, so maybe the maintenance be low.
all
Yeah,
I got.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, San, Brad, and Mary Heather. You can go now if you'd like. Thank you for being here.
See Hannah when we went out of the room on the
All right.
So now we got
The 2024 draft meeting schedule?
Yes. Did you all want to go through my work plan for next year with the actions that I plan to do? We can skip it if you don't want to. It's in there. You can look at it independently.
Can you email it?
It's in the packet.
Oh.
we've got the.
We got it?
We'll take a look at it.
It spurred me doing the rest of my work plan for 2024 because I had to provide this for you all. So those are the actions in there that I plan to work on in 2024. Again, same kind of percentage of my time as it has been last year. About 15% of my time is devoted to the urban forestry management plan and you all.
Well, it seems to be working.
I'm not the only one implementing, so it's not just me. So I have this draft meeting schedule. One, want to point out that April 9th, to the best of my knowledge, is that's the only joint meeting that I'm aware of that we'll have. That will be the month after the Wildland Urban Interface is made official. It's very likely that more than one after April might need to be joint, so this is draft. We're going to kind of play it by ear to see what we get with the Wildland Urban Interface and how much we need to change what we have been working on from there. Yep.
I believe we had a discussion 6 months ago, perhaps, when we were talking about the mandatory election of our chair and vice chair, that I believe our terms
It was May, right?
change in March, or is it May?
Well, I mean, historically, we've done it at the beginning of the year.
Well, we talked about scheduling the annual election for the same month or the month after our terms rotate.
Oh,
So
so,
many of you
so
will
that
have the
we-
same terms.
Yeah,
Like Brody and Hannah were brought in at a different month than many of you. I want to say it's May that many of you, your terms start, but it's not the same for everybody.
oh, it isn't? Okay. I was just gonna suggest that we're supposed to put that on the calendar, annual elections, and that it coincide with that date when most of the terms end.
is anybody's term ending this next?
I think maybe the following year. There's one person, I don't recall who it is off the top of my head.
How long are the terms?
3 years?
3-year terms, I think.
I can schedule it for May. That'll be good after Arbor Day. If people are tired, they can pass the torch. If they're not, they're energized, they can stay and keep that. Does that work?
Yeah.
Adding that to May?
And I'm looking for the review of our recommended trees.
Yeah, so that is likely in April. If not, we'll be scheduled for another joint meeting sometime after that. I don't know what month. I can add it at the bottom as items to be scheduled or topics to be scheduled. And then when the Wildland Urban Interface stuff is more clear and we've picked things back up with the consultant and the month is more apparent, I can add it back in. I normally will edit this once or twice a year, and
Sure.
Is the consultant working with that, helping with that piece?
they will be. They're still hired. We've extended the contracts. So
For the
I can add.
Tree species list?
Is that the group out of Seattle that's doing that, or is that?
So the landscape code was your place of work, and then the other two they changed their name. They were out of, I want to say it was Kirkland. They changed their name anyway.
Okay, but they're the ones that are,
Watershed was what they used to be
oh,
called.
that's right,
DG Watershed now, I think.
good group, right, okay. But are they the ones putting together the tree list?
Yes. And they were working on one that was not, so they had the approved street tree list that they're working on changing, but they also were working on was much shorter than that, but, like associated, other vegetation that does well with those species or other recommended ones. And we talked about maybe having like guild suggestions for, 3 different species that like to be with each other, but we'll see where that pans out.
I'm wondering where there might be an analysis of our tree inventory. I think we're making an effort to keep it current, and I think it'd be appropriate to maybe once a year, maybe once every other year, what did we lose and what did we plant? And what's working in terms of survivability and
what our goals might be, like,
yeah.
what are we really trying to achieve in terms of a
I mean, we've
distribution?
talked about things like we know ash borer is coming. Do we want to, are we seeing that yet? Or do we want to do something in the planting plans to avoid planting more ash trees? That sort of thing might be appropriate for us to just think about or review annually or every other year. I don't know if that's part of one of the things that's already on the agenda.
So that's not part of any of the actions that I had put in my work plan. I can try to see if I can find an intern to do it. If not, if you want to find something to scrape off my work plan so I can allocate time to that.
Yeah. Well, you're in the process, aren't you, of getting the Public Works Department to maintain the inventory? That's not being done yet, so it's not something, I mean, after that's done, then maybe it would be great to have kind of a baseline. Here's the analysis of our inventory. We actually did it in 2018 when we did the initial inventory, didn't we? We had an analysis.
There was analysis for a couple different things, like what trees were associated with the higher sidewalk uplift.
And we just had % of each species, I think, as part of the inventory.
If that into the urban forestry management plan.
Will it be possible with the new database and tracking procedures to summarize once a year what's been removed, what's been added?
Likely, yeah.
But we
It
don't
would be easier to do that.
need to do that until we have that process in place.
And I will be working on it, so I have the first meeting this week, and it'll, like I said, there's one process for 2 departments, and then we'll have to develop another process for another 2 departments and figure that out. Hopefully that won't take forever, and hopefully it works seamlessly, but I imagine that as we try to implement that, there will be some stumbling blocks that we'll have to go forward and solve. So I'm not sure that like at the end of 2024 that we would have really helpful summary. We'd have something. And I know that looking at this year, we'd have the number of trees that volunteers went out and ground truth and identified were removed. But that's not all of the trees in the inventory.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Just in reading calendar, yeah, meetings.
Any other things that you would like to see scheduled or issues? Start brainstorming what you would like to do for a field trip next year.
And how often are we doing our tree canopy assessments? Is that every 5 years?
I think it's every 5 years, so
What do we do for that?
it was done in 2018.
Oh, so it's right around the corner.
Should have been.
For our GIS staff.
That's our main metric, that we're tracking, everything's rolling up to the tree canopy, or vegetation canopy, I don't.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, that's what we should be saying.
I know the county did one that included our boundaries this year. I've not gotten any of that data yet, but I know the person to reach out to.
But make sure it's apples to apples.
Yeah, it's
The
likely to.
baseline was developed under certain,
The method is
parameters?
probably slightly different.
and all of a sudden, if you do a measurement using different parameters, you may not be able to compare really easily.
I will talk to our GIS staff and ask,
The goal was that the city could do it themselves, right?
and that's what we had done in the past. So it was our GIS staff, and they developed a method that worked for them, because there was the earlier method that didn't quite work for them, and they went through troubleshooting. The same staff that's still here, they know how to do it. I will check in with them to see if they have any capacity next year to do it.
That seems like a top, I mean, we committed to, that's a major
And I'm sorry,
pin in
the
the,
oversight for me to, not catch that year. It wasn't in the Excel sheet of,
Right.
so, I'll ask and see if they can fit it into their, work plan. If they can't, then I'll ask them to proactively put it in 2025, and we'll be a year late, but.
seriously.
I'll check the frequency and if they can do it.
Thank you.
When was it done?
It would be interesting just there, what he was talking about, you know, is tree removals in the park.
Yes,
So just to know that maybe 80% of them were just one species.
yes,
that they're having trouble with.
Mhm.
So we don't wanna fool around with that one.
right.
But I don't know whether he might be just keeping track of the number.
Or they might be a good species, it might just be old,
Yeah, well, that's another
Phased
important
out.
point.
yeah. But you have to know what, a distribution of what was removed.
Yeah,
So we wouldn't know the change of that, for the park. So we just inventoried the park trees this year, just
Yes.
since October. So we wouldn't be able to compare past data to that yet, but in the future we would be.
We'd have a baseline.
Does he keep a record of what he removes, when he removes it?
I know he keeps a record of, what I ask for Tree City USA, which is the cost and the number of trees. Beyond that, I've not asked him to report anything further.
I thought that'd be pretty easy to make a note of what species it was.
And he does have, an arborist on staff.
Yeah.
And like you said, another person who's studying to get their ISA certification.
It might be helpful to know, when you're cutting the tree down, count the rings. How old was the tree? I mean, is this a 6-year-old tree, you know, that they just planted and failed? Or is it a old growth that, would have a major impact on the canopy?
Mhm.
Are we losing young trees? Or are we losing old trees?
Losing all of the same kind of tree,
Yes.
diversity of trees, trees in one area. Any other comments on the schedule for next year?
It's already overflowing.
It's already overflowing.
It's already overflowing.
Don't have anything.
Oh, thank you.
just we've got one meeting every month.
Right.
Well, we used to have a break in there.
We used to have it every other month, right?
It's summer.
Sometimes it would be like,
6 to 7.
yeah.
If there's, a month that you would like to
Yeah,
What's going
sure.
on.
Take off.
give y'all a break,
I understand that.
when, we can figure it out on the schedule right
I
now.
don't think so, with all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, a
in the
lot of-
new council.
Yeah.
How many new council members?
One,
Huh?
just one.
Oh, just one new council member?
Are they pro-tree?
Councilmember, Schneider did not run for reelection, and he has, the person who was, elected, last I checked the results, is a planning commission member that you all have worked with,
Great.
Kelly Von Holtz.
Oh, so there's not that big of a change.
Yes, there were four, Councilmember Dahlhoff ran for reelection, no issue,
Unopposed.
elected. Councilmember Kathy was opposed but still won, and, Councilmember Jefferson also, ran and retained his seat.
Okay, so they're familiar with it.
Yeah, that's good, have momentum.
Yeah.
Is there a month you'd like to scratch off the list? Because
No.
I can build my work plan around that.
All right.
Yeah, right.
And who knows what'll happen with wildfire thing. All right, okay, our next meeting is 1/8/2024. We make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved?
All right. All in favor of adjourning our meeting from Monday, December 11th, Tumwater Tree Board, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I'm glad we finally got to hear you, Tanya.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. I have no idea. Oh, next time I'll have the whole video and voice. It'll be epic.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Have a good-
Great.